And we're really happy to be bringing another season of Third House sessions, albeit virtually. I want to thank our legislators who are here. I see I see Senator Walker is here, and I see Representative Ryan Lauer is here. Welcome. Um, I, we
Good
have,
morning.
hello, we have invited Senator Eberhardt, Representative Jim Lucas, and Senator Eric Cook. And as far as I know, they're not on the call. If that's wrong, shout out to me, gentlemen. Um, we're going to let me just say thank you to our sponsor, Natural Choices for Healthful Living. I think Carolyn Bierman's on the call. So we appreciate her many years of support of this program. So this is a chamber-sponsored program that allows our members and the community to interact with our legislators during the Indiana General Assembly. We'll get started with just a few remarks from Representative Lauer and Senator Walker, um, and then we'll jump into our questions. Um, Representative Lauer, would you like to begin with some just brief remarks?
I'd be happy to. And thank you, Cindy and the Chamber, for hosting this third house. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk with constituents and hear what their thoughts are. And I'm happy to talk about a lot of the things that have been going on at the State House and the bills that have been getting through, and what I believe will be strengthening Hoosiers and making sure that we get through the virus, that we make sure that our economy is strong and continues to get stronger, that we get people back to work. And there's a lot of topics that we'll be going over today, I'm sure. Um, a few things I'd like to focus on. We're again going to be passing very likely a fully balanced budget. And Indiana's been in an amazing position financially. We've been able to weather this most difficult year for everybody, and I'm happy to report that our finances are strong, our cash balance is healthy, and that's unlike most of the states. All our surrounding states are having a lot of problems bleeding cash, cutting programs. But Indiana's, I'm thankful that we're in a position to be able to invest in Hoosiers as we come out of this pandemic. And our budget reflects that. I'm sure we'll get into some of the details, but a balanced budget is going to be voted on today, I believe. Our other agenda bills include civil immunity. I think there was a question on that, or I've gotten questions on that, and that's House Bill 1002. And that will give businesses, small businesses, schools, hospitals, a layer of protection for legal liability for issues concerning the COVID-19 virus. And that's something that's very important to our businesses, and to make sure that that there's not any unfair practices out there trying to go after our schools and our businesses. So that's something we could talk about today. House Bill 10,000 or 1003 made sure that we got full tuition support, full funding for our schools. Some of our schools and had to go virtual for a while, and also a hybrid approach on other schools. And 1003 makes sure that our schools get full funding during this most unusual year. We also have some great bills supporting small businesses, some help for our struggling industries. We have an expansion of school choice. in House Bill 1005, and very excited to talk about that. We also have a very strong bill, a very bipartisan bill, actually unanimously voted in the House, that supports our law enforcement, that adds a lot of new funding for our police officers, for cameras for our officers, body cams, for a $70 million for our training academy, and also language that protects officers and protects communities from the rare case that you have a bad actor, someone in law enforcement that does something and then tries to go to a different department somewhere else. That has tightened up, and we're going to be able to protect our communities from bad actors as well. And then I'm really excited to hear what our community, what you are thinking, what your issues and concerns are. There's a lot more to talk about, but I'll end it there, and appreciate the time this morning. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
You sound good. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Senator Walker, will you give us an update, and maybe you can address Senate Bill 1, COVID liability, and 44, work share?
Sure, Cindy. Thanks for having me this morning. I just noticed the camera adds 15 pounds, so I really haven't gained weight. Just want to ensure everyone of that. Let me do that first so I don't forget. Senate Bill 1 dealing with the, it's an immunity, a limited immunity. So essentially, it gets to the concept that the virus is part of our everyday life these days. We recognize that. And it would protect everything from businesses, small business, not-for-profits, schools, churches. It would protect us from lawsuits that would claim that there is a liability because a visitor, an employee, someone contracted the illness. First of all, those are very complicated matters to trace and track, and you have to be able to show with some degree of confidence that the illness is directly resulting from someone else's behavior. So the language also includes exclusion for gross negligence. So if an employer says half of us have COVID in the building, you got to be here, I don't care what, and you for some reason show up to work that day, I think you can make a good argument that's gross negligence. And so that would not be, there would be no liability protection, no civil liability protection. So far across the nation, we've been tracking for these class action suits. We have not seen a lot of that. I think a lot of attorneys, I think a lot of organizations have been watching that and don't feel like that's the direction that this pandemic is taking us. But the language is there as a safety measure nonetheless. And so it's meant to encourage us to go about business as usual, when business as usual includes recognition of CDC health recommendations. It includes recommendations of social distancing and all the things that we have been drilled to understand and appreciate. One can make the argument, if you don't have these basic factors in place, then you are willfully negligent. So it really doesn't change much in terms of a litigation environment other than to really protect against the class action suits. We've tried to make the bill apply equally to everyone. There was some controversy and conversation, particularly around nursing homes. There was some nursing home language that was removed late in the process in the Senate that has given people pause, but in referring to other places in the code, health providers already have an extra duty to provide safety from communicable disease. There's already additional expectations that are in the law. So to put special exclusions or protections or requirements in this language did not seem appropriate. and it was removed. And that, well, why are we now giving nursing homes a pass? And I don't, from my reading of it, we're not. Again, reminding everyone, this is the first half of the session. So today is the last day that a bill can be heard on second reading, that can be amended on the full Senate floor. Tomorrow, we will pass all bills by the third reading calendar, or they are dead as far as the Senate is concerned, unless there's language very similar alive in the House. You asked about 44
Work share, yes.
work share. So actually, as a member of Pensions Committee, I heard that bill last week, Wednesday. That bill did not receive a vote in committee, although I got the impression that members of the committee were ready to advance the idea. The chair took the position that it is a new government program and it's an expansion of a program that would discourage people from seeking work. I appreciate there is the idea that if you lose a job, you might be more inclined to go out and look for a better position. You might be more inclined to go out and receive additional training so that you're prepared for a better position when that becomes available. And work share might possibly be a disincentive to making those leap forward for the individual worker in the workplace. On the other side, work share is the idea that if you have, let's just keep a simple example, 5 people on staff, and you needed a 20% reduction in payroll costs and you lay off 1 member. Well, you could reduce the hours of all 5 by 20%, and work share would work in conjunction with the federal unemployment trust fund administered by the state of Indiana to say, well, you can receive up to 20% of the benefit you would otherwise have received had you been laid off, had you been severed when it's not for cause. And you can still, of course, then be on your employer's insurance programs, 401k, and whatever other fringe benefits are available. The advantage to the employer is pretty clear. If you ramp up and work returns, you have 5 trained, skilled people to work instead of 4 and having to go out and hunt a 5th. The advantage to the employee is I've got work, and yes, I've taken a cut. The unemployment insurance trust fund does not backfill 100% of the missing wages. It works out to a cap of, I think it's on $390 per week, I believe. And you can't, even if your salary was $2,000 a week, you can't earn above that $390 cap for starters. And then it'd only be 20% of that. So again, it's only a small benefit. The analysis of the trust fund, I know I'm getting the weeds on this, but you asked. The analysis of the trust fund is ultimately it has marginal or non-measurable impact on the total fund cost. That is, the same amount of benefits get distributed either way. So I don't understand the argument this is an expansion of big government, but we did not move the bill in the Senate out of committee due to the chairs not putting it up for a vote. We did have the hearing. So that might come back. We've talked about it now, Cindy, at least 4 years in the Indiana Senate. I will say in closing out my comments that we've got a lot more going on that is normal business than what we generally talk about. So it's not all just about COVID-19. It's not all just about the current situation we're in, but some of the things we're still working on, I think, are very long-term or long vision ideas, and they're just normal business. I'm still dealing with election matters. I'm still dealing with pension issues, public pension issues. I've got an insurance bill I'm excited about. There's a food security bill, farm to table, that I got out of the Senate that I'm interested in, and I think it's just there's a lot of things going on at the same time. I wanted to touch quickly on the governor's emergency powers because the Senate is ready to move that language as well. I believe today, I know I heard the governor's comments over the weekend that the Senate bill is constitutional. And I think that is the first priority, is making sure we have language to do that. But it also involves the legislators in a manner that there's more dialogue and more give and take. but keeps the power in the hand of the executive. That Senator Chip Perfect and I actually worked on much of the language that was amended in Tuesday in Rules Committee. I had the first draft because he and I wrote that together and flow charted it out and came up with ideas about keeping us engaged, but keeping the governor in charge throughout the entire emergency process. We can only have one executive. We cannot have legislators behaving as executive branch decision makers. And so I think we have a product that does that, and we'll see if we can move that forward.
Thank you. Senator Walker, since you have the floor, Senate Bill 377, we're all very aware that our technology infrastructure isn't what it could be and isn't what is needed to keep Indiana competitive. It impacts schools and business and other aspects of life. Senate Bill 377 looks like it's got some pretty aggressive targets. Can you talk a little bit about funding for broadband moving forward? This is Senator Zay's broadband bill.
Senator Zay broadband bill, I think, does a couple things. I think it tries to close the gap of the final mile or the final connection. So if you've got a trunk that's running out and it's still, say, $200,000 for the internet provider to run that extra mile and maybe pick up 4 or 5 or 6 customers, this is funding to close that gap. There are other bills. Senator Baldwin has one that I don't think I'm going to stay behind that bill. He's being aggressive in terms of creating new network infrastructure. We want to make sure we're not overlapping with existing free market providers of broadband coverage. And so Senator Zay's language closes that gap. And there's another function of that bill that's not coming to me right now.
Does it set some targets by 2026 for counties to have 90% coverage?
I think there are some investment targets to make sure that coverage happens. I got a chance to talk to the governor this past week on this topic, and we were comparing it between this process and rural electrification. I said, well, the problem with rural electrification, or the benefit of rural electrification, was all that copper that you laid down didn't look like it was going to be obsolete in 3 to 5 years. And that's the issue with the broadband technologies. Whatever we do, someone is already working on the replacement for whatever infrastructure we lay down. So that's really the bigger hurdle than having the investment dollars. And so I think if you say that this is a public good and you provide some incentives through the public to get that done, that is appropriate. But I don't want to see us get too aggressive with it. And I'm not sure if 2026 is the right target date or not. I'm supporting that right now. But there's still a question in my mind about, building out. I mean, the only time Indiana, and I said this in talking with the governor last week, I said the only time Indiana went bankrupt, you remember, he said, oh yeah, it was the canals. And that was because we were investing in a technology to move goods for the rural community. And then the railroads came along and made them obsolete in a matter of years, and we were stuck with the bill. So there's some parallel here. So I'm optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic about some of these approaches. And I think I like in particular the ability to close that last mile, or that last half mile, that last bit of connection. To me, seems to have the most promise, and the part of the bill that caught my attention. But again, I'm sorry, there was another aspect of that bill beyond the deadline that's not coming right now. That sound like an attractive feature that can't get.
If you look it up while Representative Lauer is speaking, we'll come back to you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Very
Over
good.
to you, Representative Lauer. I do want to touch on tax exemption for Paycheck Protection loans. That's really important to so many of our members who receive those. So do you want to just, there's not a lot to say, I don't think, but 13.
Yeah, no, that's been an absolute focus on one of the major issues that we want to make sure that we give those that were involved in the PPP loans, that they don't get hit with a whopping tax bill. So that is part of the House 1001 budget, and there's language in there that aligns our tax code with the federal code. There was a little part of this issue came up because of a discrepancy in the location of the program in Indiana code. That is rectified in the House budget bill, and it will exempt those that took the PPP loans from getting a large tax bill. So that is a priority, and that's part of the House budget bill.
That's good news. Thank you. I do want to touch on House Bill 1367, widely reported in the Star and in the Republic. Would you talk to us a little bit about that bill regarding the school districts in South Bend?
Happy to. You know, there was news about some tension that happened in the State House, and it was unfortunate. We have rules of decorum. When you're a speaker on the dais, when you have the floor, you should every member deserves to have the respect of the floor and be heard. On that bill, we had up there representing his community, and just for those on the line here, it's what's called a disannexation bill. The residents of Green Township up north are part of the South Bend School District, and over the years, it's the fact that 75% of all the kids in that district go to a different school district. So the author that represents that community has a bill, which you mentioned, to allow through a democratic process, so through referendum, and it requires 60% of the residents there to approve it if they should move forward, to allow them to join the school district that their kids are going to. The underlying bill has an effect, of course, of the property taxes for those residents in a new school district would go to the school district that they would potentially join. So we had a debate on that. It was, I know they had residents and they had people from both sides of the issue during committee. I wasn't on that committee, but it was brought to the House floor, and it was opposed by the Democrats. And you know, we saw headlines when I saw the Indy Star and the AP headlines. I found the headlines to be and some of the articles to be not exactly what I experienced there. What I experienced was my colleague up on the dais using some strong language and labeled the bill or the people in Green Township discriminatory. And you know, as members, you have the right to speak your mind, and the members on the floor, under our rules of conduct, should always remain civil. And unfortunately, some members of the House reacted, and there were some gasps and groans at the discrimination charge, and then that prompted my friend Representative Porter to leave the room, and I take in all the arguments, all the debate on every bill, and on this case, I looked at it very closely. people were passionate on both sides of that bill. I
You're breaking up a little bit, Representative Lauer. Or maybe I'm breaking up.
did not and don't see any. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Either you were breaking up or
Can
I
you
was
hear me?
breaking up. Yes, yes.
Okay, excuse me. Yeah, my internet's not too great.
Well, can I
So what I was trying to say,
can I interject? One of the things that members of well, members in the House spoke about was the dissent decree that the South Bend School District is under an order from dating back to the Reagan era around segregation. They're under a U.S. Justice Department order. So they talked about the balance in the district and possible legal challenges. So can you address that? Does it create tensions with
right?
the U.S. Justice Department dissent?
Well, we have three branches of government, and that school district is the only one in the state that still has on the books a dissent or a consent decree from 1981, and that those types of actions in schools stemmed out of the 60s and 70s in looking to integrate our schools, and that's still on the books there, and so that is part of the discussion. And I think probably the main reason that there's passion on this subject. The reality is that 75% of the kids are already going to a different school district, and I guess the question is the school district lines, well over 50 years old, were drawn, and the question is, should a community be able to decide for themselves what's best for their children and what's best for their district? But before I broke up, I was trying to say, after studying the bill and the testimony and speaking to the author, I don't see any aspect of discrimination or racism in their efforts to try to change school districts. They're already voting with their feet. And as to the Justice Department, that's just another hurdle that they'll have to work through as a separate branch of government. If the residents decide to vote and move to this other school district, and the reasons they gave were mostly because it's a lot farther. That was the main reason, that it's quite a trek to get to the school district, and for other reasons as well that were mentioned. The people in that district, I believe, should have a right to make that decision. And should they do that, then the Justice Department would certainly review that, and it would, it could very well end up in the courts, and that's just another hurdle that they would have to go through if that's what they want to do for their community.
And so right now, the ADM from those students is going to the Green Township School, and this would
Right.
the property tax would then follow, right?
Right. So because they're already, most of the students are going to a different school district, the base tuition and the state tuition money is already flowing to following the student. Our structure in Indiana is that the dollars follow the families, follow the student. And so that funding is already going to the other district. The question is, those citizens there that are, like we all do, pay property taxes that also add to the budget of their schools, should should they have the right to decide to move to a different school district so that their property taxes go to the schools that their children are attending.
Thank you. On a kind of related matter, you raised this in your earlier comments about House Bill 1005, the school choice bill. And we got a lot of questions about that from our audience, and they want to know why you support this expansion of vouchers.
Yes. Well, I think first and foremost, I'm a strong supporter of the ability for parents to make the best educational choices for their kids. And there's I've had a lot of uh, feedback from constituents, letters and emails, phone calls on Bill 1005, the school choice, both in favor and not in favor. And I appreciate both perspectives. There are a few things that I hear that I'd like to address. However, first of all, the bill itself expands the eligibility, so it brings more families in the middle class to be eligible for vouchers for school choice, and it also equalizes the support for the students. Now, at the end of the day, every student that chooses to go to a different school, other than a traditional or charter school, um, only get 90% of the tuition funding. So for every student that makes a choice to go to a different school, 10% of that is still a part of the school balance of the trust fund uh, that's available for public schools as well. One thing that is mentioned, which I'd like to clarify, is that you can support school choice and you can support our public and traditional and charter schools as well. And I am a strong advocate for that. I've been very forward in my caucus to make sure that we are supporting our public schools as well, and our budget reflects that. So we are expanding school choice. We're bringing in also a new concept called education scholarship accounts. Those are for disabled challenge students, for foster kids, and for active military kids. That will give them more flexibility for their educational needs, and some have very special educational needs. But from the public education side, over the biennium, we're looking at a record amount for public schools that Indiana has ever spent, upwards of $600 million new dollars for public education. And I'm a firm believer in public education. And I am very proud of this budget. It's going to increase our public dollars to our traditional public schools. It's going to, Bill 1008, for instance, also gives quite a bit of dollars for lost learning, meaning those kids that have fallen behind during this pandemic, and there are too many that need some extra help over the summer. There's a lot of dollars available to help those kids catch up. And what we're looking at is a two-pronged approach to make sure that our public schools are well funded. There's a lot of new dollars there, and remember, 2 years ago in the budget we gave an increase of $750 million new dollars. And so this biennium budget's going to bring our public schools to K through 12 to over $15 billion a year. In comparison, the expansion of the school choice is going to be have a fiscal of around 66, about $70 million of new money there. So 70 million expansion in school choice versus 600 million for our public schools. And I'm very passionate that every child gets a quality education, and I'm happy that we have excellent public schools in Columbus and Bartholomew County. You know, that's not the case all across the state. There are people in other school districts and other communities that make a choice to go to a different school. And I think it's important that our government supports individual families and individual students to give them the best options that for their success in the future. And happy to take any more questions on that as well.
I want to kick it over to Senator Walker and ask him the same question, because Senate Bill 412 is, I think, kind of a companion bill on the vouchers. Senator Walker, can you address that?
Yes, Cindy, I think when we talk about school choice, many of on the call know that my wife and I made that choice years ago for our own children. 4 children are all homeschooled. Indiana has always been a state to recognize that parental responsibility and that parental privilege to teach their own children, to find private education, or to access public education. And I hope we continue to sustain that. So the argument is over who's paying for it. We didn't have vouchers. We didn't have incentives from state tax coffers to homeschool our children, and we made certain sacrifices. There's give and take in anything you do. So I'm cautiously supporting vouchers. I wish I heard more from the general public in support of voucher expansion, as opposed to hearing from those in particular who are more directly involved with public education in their disapproval of expansion of vouchers. If this is something we're doing for parents and for families and for children, the arguments that are coming to me at least seem to be more one-sided in opposition to the expansion concept. So I'm not saying that it's not valuable and that there aren't folks who can take advantage of that. It's sort of the but-for argument again, that well, if my children would do well in a private school setting, if I could just get some extra tuition dollars to help pay for it, we could do that. If that truly is the best decision, parents are accustomed to sacrificing for their own children, and I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the support of public education as an institution is not my priority. The support of public education as fulfilling a necessary function and a desire and fulfilling a desirable goal of educating the public, I strongly support. So it's about finding the balance between the two. If we have market share that continues to shift to the private sector, then it is unnecessary to prop up a large bureaucratic approach if the private entities are satisfying the education needs. And so that is really the debate that we're not having. And I'd like to, again, engage more on that idea of, are our public schools fulfilling their responsibility? For the vast majority of people, I'd say the answer is yes. Are there still opportunities and are there still choices that could be made? That's clear too. In Indiana, there are choices one can already make. So this argument over the funding feels a little political sometimes, instead of really looking at best allocation of scarce resources. But the last piece of this is I wonder how scarce the resources are. Right now, we're looking at a lot of federal dollars that are moving directly to school corporations. And I'm not saying that's a bad choice, but what I am saying is that budgets can become pretty inflated pretty quickly. And all organizations have a tendency to expand to meet the largesse of their budgets. That's public and private sector. And so as we watch what's also occurring on the federal level, and that's still being debated today, I think we need to keep that in mind as we make decisions about what our local obligation and what our state obligation should be to funding. And I'm not sure I have enough information to say this is the right time to make adjustments in those allocations at the state level, because so much is still up in the air. So I'm watching these, but I don't know that I've come to a conclusion yet as to when's the best time to say we've got a good handle on what's going on across the board, all resources available to schools, and all of, and I will say again, I talked to many school superintendents throughout the summer and this past fall, and as the pandemic was first breaking upon us, and the level of extra work and worry and planning that went into running the schools in the most effective manner they can was exemplary and continues to be. And so I almost want to say we need to put the brakes a little bit on and just kind of watch what's going on everywhere as we move forward with these discussions.
Thank you. You're right. Our educators have been real heroes during this pandemic.
Yeah.
I have another funding question around education. It's about retired teachers who have not seen a rise in their cost of living adjustment for many years, since 2008. Is there an appetite to put that in the budget this year?
That's not a budget item, Cindy, as much as it is a charge against the retirement account funds themselves. And the direction we took those funds a couple of years ago, I actually carried the language to remove from the state retirement budgets. That's all public funds, not just teachers, but all public retirement accounts. There's always been the question about the cost of living allowance. And so a COLA, if you assign a 1% COLA, that is an increase in payouts that is perpetual. That is, every future distribution is going to have that 1% built in on top of whatever else is being distributed. And so it's a compounding number, and you have to have so many $1 million on hand today if you're going to meet all those future obligations that you legislate. The House is sending to me a bill that has a cost of living allowance that's funded out of the general accounts of the retirement funds, whereas we created a supplemental account to take some of that question out of how is this paid for. The supplemental accounts are to have a full balance of whatever dollars are necessary in order to do a cost of living, or what we call the 13th check, just an additional payment. And it creates stability in the base retirement funds. Now, the Internal Revenue Service regulates some of this language by separating the two, having the uncertainty in the accounts that we fully fund before we allocate them, and then having the base accounts not being impacted by those changes. We're able to get better credit rating. We're able to get extra assurances in our accounting processes. We get a higher value placed on the stability of our funds, and what we used to call actuarially funded. That actuarially funded number goes up. That helps us both in managing the retirement accounts and in managing other aspects of state business by having that high degree of confidence that we're not overextending ourselves. And so that bill's coming to me, and it has money coming out of those general accounts. I'll struggle, I'll admit candidly, I'll struggle with doing that, because that reverses a lot of the work we put into compliance with the IRS regulations on having accounts that are more predictable and manageable. It's already bad enough with the volatility in the investment market to say with confidence we have enough dollars today to pay for all the future retirement benefits that are already on the books. And it's tough to add more out of that general balance. I will definitely look at that. I would say the appetite is not as strong in the Senate as it is in the House for that kind of procedure, which is probably why that bill started in the House. Senator Boots, I mentioned Chair of Pensions a minute ago. He is one of those believers, as am I, in having the stability of our base retirement accounts. So we'll talk about it and we'll look for what we can do. And maybe there's some one-time dollars that again are maybe outside of our current funding mechanism that could be useful for that, but we'll have to see what we can do.
Thank you. I want to get back to something you referenced earlier. You talked about elections, and you've been pretty outspoken about, your study and your interest in the redistricting process. Kind of along those same lines, this year with the rise in absentee voting, talk to us about Senate Bill 117.
117.
Believe
say?
what this, 117, it said, what is the status of legislation that would allow for no excuse mail-in absentee voting for all registered Hoosiers? And I haven't looked this one up.
Okay. No, Cindy, I'm aware now. That bill was not heard in Elections Committee. There was an amendment offered on the floor to extend no fault absentee by mail. I voted in favor of that amendment. I've supported that in the past, and I will continue to support it. That bill failed on the Senate floor a few weeks ago. Excuse me, that amendment. So the bill was not heard. The amendment failed. I think it is only appropriate that we align the fact that when you vote early in person, no one asks you for an excuse of why you're not going to be around on election day. It's a matter of convenience. It's a matter of I've made up my mind on the candidates and I'm ready to get this over with, or whatever it is. And so why do I have this 13-point checklist I have to go through for the absentee by mail that I don't when I walk in and vote a month ahead of the elections in person? I think those two should be aligned. Regarding it, that's not going to happen from the Senate side, and I'm fairly confident, knowing the House chairman, that's not going to happen in the House either. And I think that's unfortunate personally. Regarding redistricting, you may have heard, maybe not, that we are now looking at possibly the 1st of September having the neighborhood level or block level detail to do the districting in the state of Indiana. That sounds to me like we're already looking at a special session in order to accomplish that in September. That is unique in my experience here, and I can gladly say I'm not in charge of that process, but I'm not looking forward to it either.
Thank you. Thank you. Back to Representative Lauer. I want to talk a little bit about downtown revitalization, or at least this is how we would sort of, this is our concern for it. There are a number of alcohol regulations being discussed, and I think they're in House Bill 1396. I think here in Columbus, we're wondering if there could be some more fluid allowances for serving alcohol outdoors as we seek to bring businesses back to downtown, create more of a active space, especially along 4th Street. Can you speak to your support of relaxing some of those liquor laws?
Sure, and very briefly, I'll just track back to the teacher's retirement. I just wanted to mention the House budget adds $32 million new dollars to pre-1996 teacher retirement, plus I think the first increase in quite a while on the 13th check. So I was happy to support that. Yeah, there is a focus on 1396, I think you mentioned,
Mhm.
which, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that expands different options for communities to have different new types of permits. And one of those I found very interesting, and probably, I hope, would be very helpful for downtown Columbus, is what's called a festival permit. And a lot of it's focused around highlighting craft wines and beers. And we do have quite a few wonderful crafts beverages in Columbus that are made in Columbus, and also others in Bartholomew County as well. And one of the new permits allows you to work with the city, of course, to get a permit for specific craft festivals, and including outdoor um, gatherings and events. And I think there's in this bill quite a new option, a number of new options for cities in downtown Columbus would be able to take advantage of this to offer different venues for entertainment for people. And I think it's a good expansion, and I think it'll be very applicable to downtown Columbus.
That's helpful. Thank you. I want to talk to you about some of the career tech ed funding changes. I'm trying to find that bill number, but perhaps you'll remember a move away from things like cosmetology, culinary arts, fashion and design, graphics into more STEM, kind of pushing the focus to STEM. You talk about
Sure.
that?
Right. So, in fact, I have gotten some questions on this, and I appreciate that. The career and technical education, I'm a very strong supporter of skilling up for getting different types of marketable skills and important skills, whether it's technical or otherwise. You mentioned STEM as well. So there are efforts that are going through and bills that have gone through that give, first of all, more dollars for CTE. So I looked at Bartholomew County. The projections estimates for our Bartholomew County schools would be over 7% each year increase in CTE funding. Also, there's changes in the law coming that allow some CTE STEM related courses to be counted towards your graduation. An example of that is a biomedical CTE a track that you could get credit for biology, for example, on that if they expand the curriculum for that particular course. So there's a renewed focus on STEM and high wage skills. There was an amendment that came in during the budget phase that shifted some of the priorities of CTE away from some of the areas that you mentioned, and I'm not strongly in favor of that. I think it is important, and the things that I mentioned previously on STEM related and high wage skills, it makes sense to give that a focus. But also there's plenty of valuable and important skills that are learned in the CTE program, from culinary arts to service industry that is getting less priority under this budget. And so I'm conflicted on that. I am happy that we are expanding. They are getting more funding coming in for CTE. I mentioned 7% each year expected for Bartholomew County increase on that. So there was a shift in priority for the funding of CTE, but the dollars have expanded.
Great, thank you. We've just got a couple minutes left. I want to ask Senator Walker about wetlands, SB 389. I understand there were a lot of environmental bills that just did not get a hearing, but this one seems to have some momentum. Senator Walker?
Yeah, Cindy, I think this bill is best characterized as um, the flexing of legislative muscle in regards to administrative overreach, or at least that's the way I perceive it. The way the bill passed out of the Senate, and I did not support it, actually, because of federal deregulation of wetlands, there are, I'm not sure all the technical terms, non-contiguous wetland areas. So you may not be right up against a river or stream, but it may be a sustained wetland environment for wildlife, et cetera. Are currently unregulated at the federal level, have been deregulated at the federal level. And the Indiana Department of Environmental Management has been charged with oversight of these wetlands. And because of some of the reactions in the public to exercising some of those state level regulations when there are no federal regulations, there have been claims of agents that have been too aggressive, that have not given consideration to the true size and impact and viability of some of these wetlands. You may have heard people talk about, oh, they want to regulate every mud puddle in the county and the state. And so with some of those charges in hand, I think there were some legislators who were trying to defend their constituents and said, we're going to send a shot across the bow and totally remove all wetlands regulations for what are roughly, I think of all the wetlands, I'm trying to remember the number, something in the neighborhood of 70 to 80% of those are under federal regulation, but it's the remaining 20-25%, and I forget the percentages, are not. And so the bill as it left the Senate said those are no longer regulated by the state either. I'm confident that as this is being explored and as the two sides sit down, that is the agencies and the legislators, to talk about some recent field decisions, might come to agreement that yes, some regulation is necessary, and we want to reinstate that in the bill language. I didn't think, I mean, if the House was to pass it today unchanged, it would go directly to the governor for signature. And I didn't want to take the risk of that language just moving as it is straight for becoming law. And so I did not support it. And it needs to be addressed. And I'm hopeful that cooler heads will do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Listen, we are almost out of time. So I want to thank you all for being with us, especially, I especially want to thank Senator Walker and Representative Lauer for taking time from their busy day to be with us for this hour. We had 100 people on the call, which means we hit our max. We're going to put an add-on on our Zoom license so everyone can hear what you have to say next time on March 22nd when we meet. We've recorded this, so we'll push this out to every single person that registered so they can hear what we discussed today. So thanks again for being with us for Third House session, and we'll see you on March 22nd.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it.
Bye all.